Oh, okay.
But before we start, I need to do something.
My word.
Here we go. Here we go. Oh boy. Hey, okay. Uh Professionalism. Holy.
Just introduce everybody. God.
Hello everyone and welcome to the third official episode of the Gaming Garden podcast, a podcast where we talk about nerdy things and how they affect people who work as artists, cosplayers, and content creators in general and how that affects their livelihood. And today, we're going to talk about story writing. What makes a good story? How do you write a story? How do you write good characters? How do you diverse that? Is it good to have multiple characters? Is it good to have one character? Are protagonists essentials, etc.? And that's what we're going to dive to today. But before we do that, let me introduce you to our official guest, She at Cheheaven. Introduce yourself.
Oh, hi. Hello, everybody. I'm Cheheaven. My name is She, but I go by She, and my
Cool.
handle is Cheheaven.
Sweet.
And then my two other um, podcast partners, if you've been keeping up with this. But for the sake of it's been quite a while, let's reintroduce them. Jack the Thinker and Noivren, would you guys introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. I am Jack. I like to draw and play games and stuff. Yeah.
You also
Alrighty.
animate.
Every now and then, yes, I do.
They take a while. What about
They
you,
do take a
Noivren?
while.
All right. My handle is at Das Neuvern. I love video games such as F Zero. I love just like a lot of Japanese culture, Japanese media, like anime and such. I love studying the language as well. I'm big on anthropology and I love reptiles and stuff. So yeah, that's me.
All right. So,
It's sauce.
our first,
Don't forget to introduce yourself.
okay, fine. I'm Momo. I go by Momo the Violet, but my real name is May Violet. I am a cosplayer and also a performer. Previous drag queen at one point in my life, but I kind of quit that. Yes, I used to do cosplay and drag. It was fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
shit is sweet.
awesome.
Um, and I am just your usual average gamer girl, but uh, for those misogynistic listener, no, I don't play what do you call it? Animal Crossing all the time. I play other games. I refuse to play Valorant because that game is for sweaties. But anyway, yeah, that's it.
Sweaties.
Yeah,
This is
God.
my anti-incel repellent. Okay, so actually, can I even say that word? I don't think it's Twitch guideline. Let's not say that word.
Let's forget we even said it. There we
It would
go. We did it.
never happen.
Anyway.
Okay, our first topic, which is like the introduction. When did you first get into storytelling and writing in general? Anyone wants to go first?
How about we let the guest start first, if
She?
she so wants to.
um. mm,
Do you want us to break the water?
yeah, y'all did.
I'll start. So I got into story writing around maybe when I was 16. I was looking into a lot of shows and a lot of stuff, and I wanted to I started noticing a lot of tropes and a lot of copy paste formulas, and I was just curious, I wonder what's the thought behind that? I wonder if I can create my own stories. Like any other, I guess a lot of kids have their own imaginary stories, but nobody ever gets in depth with it until later on in their life once they have developed enough experience to relate and project onto their characters. And so around 16 I got into it, but I wasn't super into it. And I think I got more into it when I met Jack. Because Jack has his own story called Mind Flyer, if I'm not mistaken.
Flurry.
Mind Flayer.
Yes.
Oh.
Flurry.
Oh.
Flurry,
What?
there we go.
Where is it available at?
It's on Twitter.
Oh, it's on Twitter.
Yes, sure is. We'll get to that later. Keep going.
And I got more invested in it because I got to see someone in person actually write their own characters and write an in-depth story. And I just got curious about it. And as I started consuming more and more media and getting bored as a college student, just I don't want to study. So I decided to just get into it. And yeah, that's how I got into it.
Do you want to go next, Myron?
Yeah. So very similar. Um, what really got me into story writing was around in high school when I just saw you and another one of my friends. You had your own stories. So I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. So if you remember, I made like this
Mhm.
Pokemon kind of like comic,
I do.
and that was pretty fun. But I wanted to like make my own characters. So around the time college started, I just started seeing like these different types of characters that I liked in different video games, like League of Legends and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, I should make characters. Like, I just want to make a story. I want to make something with these characters, these cool characters. And that's when I started just creating some characters. And nowadays, I'm still doing that. Like, I've taken a break from writing story, but I do really want to get back into it soon. I just got to think of exactly what I want to write. The hardest part for me is just character design and all that.
Yeah.
But one main reason too why I'm gonna keep going at story writing is because I just see all these tropes that I'm not really a fan of, and I kind of want to break that mold and show readers, anybody interested, things that are you usually don't see in media nowadays, such as like specific character archetypes. Like, oh, you're gonna think this character is a villain, but they're really not. And it's just that things aren't as black and white as it is in some media. So that's another reason that drives me in wanting to keep on
Right.
the writing and world building.
Yeah, those are good reasons.
Hmm.
As for me, I started working on stuff since I was I guess like a little kid. Obviously, like May said, it was never like well thought out or anything. It's just a kid with a sketchbook, just drawing out things that don't really make sense. Like I look back to it and like this doesn't have a cohesive story or anything to do with this pages back there. So I just kept doing that over and over until I reached a point where I was like, this is very fun, you know? And that's I've just been doing that for so long. And and it's so fun just seeing your characters come to life, interact with each other and all that. That's what drives me in this whole story building situation. And
Hmm.
you can find my story if you're really interested and my in my Twitter, that's Jack the Thinker, or at Jack_Thinker if you're interested.
All right.
Okay.
I
Pretty
think if you put the hashtag MindFlurry on Twitter, you'll find like the entire comics.
Okay.
Or at least most of it.
That's pretty cool. Um, so I guess it's my turn then.
It sure is.
So I want to say I started writing when I was very young. I was drawing and making stories. I had this whole story about like cube head people who I designed myself, and I still have all the little books that I created. I created a long story, and I drew these characters all by hand, made a backstory. I did all that, and I think I got inspired just by watching, shows on TV, seeing like how they developed. I wanted to create a some characters that didn't look like the characters on TV, but were closer to home, that looked like me. So I did do that as a child a lot. And I mean, I kind of scrapped that idea. I don't write anymore. My my actual boyfriend, he actually is he writes. So I kind of helped him develop some characters here and there. But
That's pretty
nothing's been
cool.
published. Nothing's been published because he's super shy.
Oh, get that.
I understand. We have a friend and they also have their own comics and stuff, but they never really felt like posting it because they're like they have this tremendous fear of fandoms, and I always find that kind of interesting because I told them multiple times, "Hey, your stuff is really good and you're such a good artist. You should totally post this.
Exactly.
You'll find your audience. Someone out there will be happy to see what you did." And that's more than enough of a reason. And he was like,
Yeah.
"What if I get hated on? What if I just like what if people
What if
like
they
become toxic and dox me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's just a fear of the internet in general when you want to be any form of creator."
Mm,
And I think for artists, you can keep yourself anonymous to a good extent. Like for cosplayers, it's a lot harder because you have a face out there and people might recognize that face and you're kind of just out there. But if you're an artist, you can kind of disguise yourself or a voice
Oh, yeah.
actor or a singer.
Mhm. You
So
sure
like
can.
I was like, you should totally just go for it. And I don't know, that's kind of how it is. So anyway, moving on to our actual topics, now that we're done with introducing all of that. What's your favorite and least favorite cliches in anime writing? Um, Noivrin, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go ahead with that. I guess I'll start with like what I dislike. So some cliches that like I just don't really like in some anime, usually like in shonen, because I grew up watching a bunch of shonen. That's really got me into anime and such. One of them is just when the protagonist or like the hero just gets beat up so many times, they don't land a single hit on their opponent, and then at the very end, they just hit them once and they win.
yes,
Like
the
I know that was
classic
been
one punch.
I know that's been made fun of in what was it, One Punch Man, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, but
Okay, but
aside
that's
from that, like a big culprit is the first Broly movie from for Dragon Ball Z. That is a big culprit of
That's a classic.
just like plot armor. Like like Broly's just destroying everyone, and then he gets hit once, and it's
just
like, oh, like the way I prefer fights is both sides are going toe to toe, blow for blow, and then it's a satisfying conclusion.
sometimes I feel
Mm.
like it's a way for a studio to be lazier because they're like, okay, we'll just animate one character and ragdoll the other one for like the next 20 minutes. And I don't know. I guess it builds up tension, but sometimes you can overdo it. Like, everyone loves garlic powder, but you can overdo garlic powder. And I feel like
Oh, you
that
can?
you totally can. Your thing
I
will
think
just
I
if you do too much garlic powder, it will be bitter. But that's not what we're talking about. Um, however, like with this whole trope of like you're getting beat up, and then like power of friendship or whatever trope you have in those
Yeah,
animes, I'll beat you in like 5 seconds. It just feels like they spent so much time animating one scene, they ended up forgetting actually animating the hero fighting back, and that just ends up being really just like really boring from like,
Mhm.
I don't know, an animation standpoint. Because who cares about one guy getting ragdolled and bumblebrooked the entire time?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
makes
Well,
sense.
What
I
about a
think.
cliche
Well,
like?
huh?
one that I like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see. I mean, I guess one that I usually don't mind seeing all the time is just that one character with like they always have to have like that dark backstory. Like, oh,
The dramatic one.
what's up about them? Like, oh, they don't talk to anybody. Oh, what's going on? I mean, usually like tragic backstories. I mean, like it's like even though they can be oversaturated, like it's like well, there has to be something like dramatic going on. Like
Mhm.
One Piece usually always has like all the crew members that join. They always have to have like this tragic backstory, like somebody died in their life and all that, which it is enjoyable seeing as long as it's done unique, like in a fresh way, which is one thing I like about One Piece.
The whole my parents were died and I ended up being an orphan is the most overused superhero trope. And I know we're talking about anime in particular, but superhero trope of like my parents died has to be the most overdone trope ever. Like everyone is an orphan. It's like an orphan club at DC.
Well, the same thing
Exactly.
about Disney. You can say that about Disney. Everybody's an
They
orphan.
gotta
Yeah,
lose a parent.
exactly.
Your parents have got to die if you
Oh,
wanna
you're
make
the main
it.
character. Oh, your parents are dead.
Parents are
Yeah,
gone.
Never
Not
it's the
allowed
noticed
only
to
way
that.
to
happen.
make it.
Jack, you wanted to go second?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, I think a trope for me every now and then it gets annoying, but it can work in certain parts. Is the love triangle.
Oh yeah,
I just do not get them sometimes. Like, there's no necessity for
Like the
three characters to
polyamorous
be
one?
in a love triangle. No, not polyamorous. Like, two people are just in love with one person, and then that one person's like, "Oh, am I gonna be with?" Blah blah blah. This and that, and it drags on for so long, and you're just like, "Oh, this is not what I am watching or reading this for." But
I see you hated Twilight. I
uh,
okay. Oh, like Bella, like, oh, do I choose Team Jake or Team whatever Wolf guy is? I don't remember their names. I never really watched the Twilight movies.
Edward and Jacob.
Edward
mhm.
and Jacob, like Team Edward, Team Jacob, like that dragged on for like what, 9 movies? That was insane.
For
Also,
too long. That's how.
speaking of fandoms, that fandom has to be either like they're either nice or one of the most insane fandoms I've seen. It's like a really old fandom though, so nobody ever sees it. But back then, it was kind of crazy, especially on Tumblr.
Hmm.
Oh, good old Tumblr.
Yeah.
Good old
When
Tumblr before what was it? Yahoo that killed it? Yeah, it was Yahoo. They spent like 3 billions to buy it. Only for no, they spent $103 billion, I think, only for them to
Mm,
make none of the profit back. It was embarrassing. They were
yeah.
like, "We wanna have it. We're removing all the not safe for work stuff." Why do you think
Oh
people
yeah,
don't?
I remember that time. That was the great reckoning in Tumblr.
I feel like in every artist and cosplay community, not safe for work, like, you have to have it with you because that's some people outlets. That's some people way of thriving, you know?
It's just another form of art. Let's just
It
yeah,
is, and the
that's about it.
stigmatization of, like if you're consuming not safe for work stuff, it is within consensual place where both parties are okay with it. So I think making
Hmm.
laws around something like that, like sure, it shouldn't be super public to the point where you just randomly stumble upon it. Oh,
Oh, we lost. We lost her.
oh,
We lost
uh-oh.
Shay. Oh,
Ah,
there she
uh,
is.
Oh, sorry, didn't know what happened.
you disappeared.
Mm, for just a second there.
Yeah, I was like, "What?" Sorry.
But so yeah, to the point
Um,
where like I feel like we should be more open about it, especially Instagram, because Instagram is really annoying about it. Mark
Oh, it really
Zuckerberg.
is.
Anyway, so that's a trope you don't like. What's a trope you like?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Trope I like. I think the trope I like a lot. It's like the mentor kind of trope where like the main protagonist gets like someone they look up to.
Teacher.
Yeah, a teacher or a parent or like, just someone that just shows them the way. And
mm,
usually that trope leads up with that one someone probably dying or something. That's a different trope altogether. But I like that trope. I like the mentor trope because it
Okay,
provides a cool dynamic.
I see that.
that is sweet.
I'll
Yeah,
go
that's
third.
sweet.
There is a trope I genuinely dislike, and I think this one show made me really dislike it. Anyone have seen or heard about Rental Girlfriend? It's like a show from like last year, the end of last
I
year.
haven't.
So
No, I don't
basically,
think
it's a
so.
show about this guy who breaks up with his girlfriend, but has to go back to his mom. And apparently, there's the service where you rent a person to pretend to be your girlfriend. And, he did that so he doesn't get embarrassed in front of his family. but his family expected to see the girl he rented more often because they didn't know he was renting her. Now
Mm,
that's fun. The storyline is
That's
interesting. That's like
that's
pseudo. Hmm?
that sounds interesting.
Oh, it
yeah.
is. It's like the
No,
most safe version of like what a sex worker life is.
it sounds like Absolute Boyfriend. You said he rented her?
Yeah, he rented her.
Sounds like a manga that I used to read a long time ago when I was a teen called Absolute Boyfriend. It was like the girl did this checklist of the perfect guy she wanted and they mailed it to her. And it was like this perfect guy for her. And people were like
Mhm.
wondering where he came from. But it just reminded me of that one.
Ah, similar concepts, it seems.
Ugh,
And
I
then,
feel that. And okay, so here's the trope that I really don't like about that show. Protagonist being an absolute sleazebag, douchebag, asshole, like absolute misogynist incel. I mean, absolute
somehow,
misogynist I
just
word.
let's stay with the D word. Let's just keep calling him douchebag. We're good there.
Douchebag, okay? And he like never improves. The entire season never holds himself accountable, constantly pushes the line, and is just in like at one point he was stalking the girl he was renting because she went on a date with someone as if he has any business in her private life. And apparently, a lot of the guys who watch that show were saying, yeah, that's totally justifiable. Like, this protagonist is just a free, like, okay, are you misogynistic? Do you hate women? You can relate to him. He was
Crazy.
basically that character, and they'd never improve him. And apparently, one of the people I know, he read the whole manga, and apparently he only gets worse. And that's
Okay.
like on purpose. The writer did say that he is like a the worst character you can imagine. But my problem is this character is apparently too relatable. If you go to the comments on Crunchyroll in the show, too many people are relating to him.
Wow.
Wow.
Many.
Okay, that just speaks volumes of the people watching it.
It
Uh,
kind of
yeah,
reminds me of like how I don't know if you watch Rick and Morty, but like how everybody relates themselves to
Oh
Rick. And it's
yes.
like, why do you want to be Rick? He's not an ideal person to be.
Exactly. He's a
he's literally
sociopath.
And it's scary that people are like, I want to be like Rick. And I'm like, I don't want to
Like, do
be
you
like
want to
Rick.
be like Rick, or do you just want to be an asshole? Is
we don't
that
wanna
Yeah.
we don't wanna call people sociopaths. It's called personality disorder. Well, different personality disorder because apparently the word sociopath is very offensive to that community. I didn't know about it till recently, but Rick is more of a selfish psychopath. He kills people
He's
for God's sake.
narcissist. He's a
he's
narcissist.
definitely a narcissist.
He is a
Anyways,
look at how traumatized his daughter is. Like, absolute narcissist, and everyone is like relatable. They only say that because everyone like Rick's personality is a byproduct of a lot of toxic masculinity. The whole I don't care about anyone. But then when he gets like really drunk, he gets vulnerable around Morty and he's like, "Well, I'm such a bad father." And I feel like that's like that's exactly the problem with a lot of men that deal with. They hide their emotion, try to act like the tough guy, and I feel like that's the part they relate to. But
who knows?
relating to everything
Yeah.
about Rick is just Jesus Christ, you're scary.
Yeah, he sees himself as a god, so it's kind of like scary that you would relate yourself to that. But sorry, sorry to go on a Rick and
Not to,
Morty
not to
tangent.
sound like a misandrist, but a guy with a god complex, but a girl with a god complex, yeah, you go off. I don't know.
No, that's the double standards. They're both terrible.
But Regina George,
Yeah, and she was
great,
terrible until she wasn't.
she's
Oh, I
great. I
love
love
Regina
her. Who
George. What?
doesn't?
So my favorite, well, a trope that I can't stand is going to be kinda like if you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, I'm sorry, but I just really hate how there's this trope where the hero will fight somebody that's strong, and he's supposed to be the strongest of all. Then they introduce a new, bigger, badder villain, and then now he has to become even powerful to fight this new bad guy. So it's
Mm,
like, okay, and it just never ends.
yeah,
I
Yeah,
yeah,
hate
yeah.
that.
I get that. I get that. Yeah.
It's understandable.
Hate that so much. I'm like, "Oh, I thought he already did this, like, can we do something different?" Like, I thought he was the strongest. He's not the strongest? Okay.
Strongest at the moment.
I know. And I know a lot of times we don't, like, love triangles, but my favorite and first anime was Inuyasha, and there was a huge love triangle in there. But I that's one of the things that I love about animes, not love triangles, but I do love when there's a trope where um a woman, not a woman, but when there's some love aspects, like she realizes that she's in love with him, or
Yeah.
you'll see the softer side of this character that's like angry all the time, but he treats the character a little bit differently. And it's just melts my heart, and I love those aspects
No,
when they
yeah,
do
like
that.
You like the
romance
egg trope?
and
Hard on the outside, soft on the inside.
Oh yeah, I think I recently started rewatching Seven Deadly Sins, and I forgot how much of a like bad guy Ban was, and then
oh
like
yeah.
sorry, Bond was, and he's all this tough guy, and then when this little fairy comes in, he sees the fairy, and she's just like little and tiny, and he's like, I love her so much, and I would do anything for her.
Yeah, he straight up sent it.
He's such a sweetheart, but I wouldn't have known that until she came along.
Yup. All right. So then,
Uh-huh.
next
Oh,
topic.
wait, I still haven't said what trope I actually like.
Okay
Oh,
then.
yes.
Pop
I
off.
totally forgot. Um, I guess my favorite trope, and like it is like a trope in itself, or like a cliche at this point. It's when characters have a mental breakdown, especially in movies, like Big Hero 6 when the little kid has a mental breakdown,
Judo.
breaks everything, and then like
Oh.
the big guy shows him his brother video, and he starts sobbing all over the place. Like I can't. Like that moment is seriously one of my
Well,
favorites.
they're meant to do that to you. They are good moments.
They're so good, and I think they give me that like humanity in the character. The character feels so alive in those moments because they're venting out their
Mhm.
frustration and all the things that's been happening to them the entire time. And I feel like if a
Yeah.
character doesn't necessarily have a mental breakdown, example Goku, I can never really like view them as a
Goku.
person. Like I need them to be human. I need them to experience negative emotions.
Ah, but you see, Goku isn't human. He's a Saiyan.
He's he's
Anyways.
literally an empty
Gosh,
husk. He's a golden retriever in the strongest body imaginable.
the bad father. Um,
Terrible
well,
father.
Terrible.
And
I think that's another thing. Like bad fathers is in animes, and it's kind of sad.
That's a risky trope, but it can work.
Piccolo was the father that stepped up.
Like oh god, I'm sorry, like if this brings back any memories to anybody, but fucking Shell Tucker from Full Metal Alchemist, that guy is an asshole, and oh, that was probably the worst father in any anime I've watched.
Oh yeah, I don't. I try not to think about that one actually.
Exactly.
Oh, I remember. I think I remember that guy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I
God,
still see his glasses flashing in my
right? That
brain.
was a horrible one. That one hit me hard.
I was like,
Uh,
oh my god, no.
Yeah. Ugh.
She, do you play games by chance?
I do not, but I'm getting into them recently
Mm.
because
I
a lot of my
might have
friends
to
play
skip
it.
over this question in that case, because the question is, what game that had a story that compelled you to the game? Like the story was more compelling than the game itself. And like,
Oh,
I'm
no.
not sure if we want to go through that in that case.
Yeah, I mean, short answer for me, Last of Us 3 got bye.
Yeah, I
That's
mean any visual novel
Undertale, I
basically because
guess.
any visual novel game for me too because it's like the game's more about the story than the actual
That's true.
gameplay.
Okay, so next topic. So what type of subplots do you like and dislike? Like
So
I'll go first because this one actually, this is just for me to vent out. Actually, this topic
okay.
for me,
Go
me
for it.
only. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, um, unnecessary love plot. I don't care if the main character is attracted to the only girl in the show. I don't care. And the heteronormativity of it is stupid. Okay? They completely ruined Yurchaka from My Hero Academia because her whole personality is I do everything to impress Deku.
Mm.
Like that boy is musky. Do better. No, he's not musky. He's fucking he's young. But like seriously, like I don't like it when a character just has to fall in love. It kind of ruins the character and only makes their whole existence is for love plot. And I feel like too many shows, too many animes do that, and it's just stupid. I mean, some
Mhm.
shows did it right, but not all of them.
Who?
Huh?
Who did it?
Some shows did it right.
Oh, yeah.
I think like some
I mean, it
Nickelodeon
can
shows,
work.
like Avatar: Last Airbender, they did a love trope that was good. It didn't take away from Aang or uh, Katara. No,
Katara.
what
Yes, Katara.
isn't? No, that's Korra. I was thinking
No.
about the other protagonist.
Yeah, yeah.
Katara and Aang were a good love story, but Katara didn't lose anything because she loved
Well,
him.
yeah, because they actually gave her like other stuff to do.
She was actually a real character. And some people like favorite character is actually Katara, but most people whose favorite character is Yurchaka are like, yeah, she really doesn't get much, especially in the anime. At least she gets
Hmm.
something in the manga, but apparently in the anime it's just like filler episode, and it's
Yeah.
just awful. And I don't know. I guess the subplot that I really like is like random mysterious things. Like they go into this weird place and they have to figure out what's going on. And sure, it doesn't have to do anything with the main plot of whatever they're trying to do, whether they're like trying to figure out how to get a new power, or they're trying to get to their friend's house, or they're trying to get to the new destination of their adventure. But they randomly stumble upon this weird thing that just happens to be like this mystery. And you get a bunch of episodes. And people say it's like filler episodes, but you get like usually those episodes introduce better concepts of the characters. And I really like that because if you don't like the characters of a show, why are you watching it?
I mean, it depends on the filler, honestly, because you can have good filler, and then you can have Naruto and Bleach filler, where they just trying to extend the runtime of the show, and it's like, let's get on with it. All right, I want to see what happens. But I agree,
Cash
some
grab.
fillers are good.
Yeah. No, I hate impactful events. Like when they use a filler just fill in, like make the series longer. Like I want something to happen in the filler that the entire series.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
I hate those fillers. I hate pointless fillers. The ones that just try to make me laugh. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Oh my gosh, fillers that have no consequence. I think that's my least favorite, honestly. Because
or
like,
just kind of makes no sense.
yeah, where it's like you're throwing in a filler, but then the characters later on won't ever mention that again.
Yes.
Even if like they fought a world-ending monster or something, it's like no, it doesn't matter. That never happened. It's like, what was the point of it
Remember when
then?
we saw God? That happened? I don't know. I can't seem to remember. No.
Yeah, that was a filler arc. Don't ever talk about that again. Basically, but yeah,
Anyway, that's it. Anyone else wants to go?
Well, I can add one
yeah.
one subplot that I really love. which is just tournament little arcs. I always loved those growing up as a kid. Like they're in Yu Yu Hakusho, they're in Dragon Ball. They're just it's just something that I just always find those so entertaining. Even though you might know this character is probably going to win, it's like these are going to be like the final two. It's just fun being able to see like the other fights of the characters you normally don't could see have the spotlight.
Yeah.
Like I know My Hero had like a little tournament arc at the start. I'm like, oh, that was cool seeing the other characters get their spotlights, and it's something that I do want to include at some point in the little story that I'm writing because I've always grown to love tournaments.
They're also a good way to introduce like cool character designs. They're probably never gonna show up again, but at least it's a cool way to just show off
Yeah.
more ideas.
More powers get used.
Mm, mhm.
Mm, let's see. Is there one that you like? She?
Oh, well, I love when there is like a larger hidden story in a series. Like it's something that the character said in passing, but then it's brought up again and it's this big thing. I think Hunter x Hunter did it great. Um, they like to do these little small um little messages in the story, and then you'll learn later. You're like, oh,
Oh,
like I think
totally.
I'm trying to think of how because they did it during the tournament. We're gonna talk about Nin, and then later on you learn Nin is like, I think it was what was it? Gosh, I gotta rewatch it. It was so
Yeah,
good.
me
I
too.
remember watching it and being like, oh my gosh, I remember when they said that.
Well, yeah, like I think one. I mean, it's pretty much the main plot, but it also applies. I think it was the fucking Gravity Falls where they just had an overarching story throughout the whole thing, but it wasn't like blatantly said every single episode. It just pieces got not getting added on and all that.
Yeah, I
Pretty
love
cool.
that.
I love it.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. It's a really good one. All right, and okay, I guess I have to say one now, huh? Let's see. One that I really like, subplots. Mm, I guess, the little rivalries that characters have every now and then, those are pretty good. Like the Kit Belt character and all that. And sometimes they go so far as to like sacrifice each other. I mean, sacrifice themselves for each other. It's a completely different thing. Um, I kind of like that. Like we just see them growing together, even though they hate each other, but they don't. That's a good subplot. I like.
I do like the whole overarching subplot story that's like there's something bigger is going on. I think what they're doing with the recent episode of My Hero Academia, with what's happening with Deku, is really cool. I think that it's not necessarily essential, but if a writer does go out of their way to write an even bigger arcing story, like I think that's like the highest quality of story writing. It adds so much richness to the story, you know?
It really does.
It's like
I
adding
guess
MSG to your steak. I should stop using food as way to fucking relate to anime.
Yeah, not everyone can cook, but I appreciate it.
like one subplot that I usually don't like that I feel is a waste of time is when you're introduced just to like a very minor antagonist and it's just like, oh, they're just gonna be a one-off. Like they're gonna lose and they take up so much screen time
And
and
they make a big deal about it.
it was just a waste of time. The one anime though that manga that did some of that right was One Piece though, because there are moments where you're like, oh, this character is not going to show up ever again, and then 100 episodes later they actually do. So it just really depends on how those characters are written. But
I
usually,
think
go on.
you make a good point, but like it's kind of unfair because One Piece is just so long that they have a chance to do that, you know?
Yeah,
So I think that's the edge One Piece has over other animes and mangas. it's just going on and going on. But you're right.
Because it's like it's just too predictable. Like, oh,
Yeah.
like what was it? The in Bleach, the Arankar. It's like there were so many just one-off characters from them,
The
and it's
entirety
just
of
like
Bleach was one off.
you're just like, oh, this character is gonna be defeated. It's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, I would like more when I get back to writing some story. I would try to do something like, oh, actually, they're actually powerful, and they might actually prevail over the protagonists.
Yeah.
Like, try to spice it up instead of being like, oh, this is just your obligatory minor
Bad guy of the
character that's
week.
going to be defeated. Yeah, bad guy of the week, bad guy of the episode.
I kind of want to diverge from this topic and talk about something that's like been on my mind.
Okay.
Do you think a protagonist is essential to stories? Is it even good? Is it overdone? Are protagonists just is the idea of a protagonist has been too like it's just the formula. Like it's been formalized into this idea of like every story has to have a protagonist and an antagonist. And that kind of limits how a story goes. I know the story can center around a certain character, but do they have to be like I don't know, like a good
Center of attention.
they have to have that bad guy. Like I know Love Life and like slice of life stories, I prefer them personally because they don't super focus on one character. Other characters actually get a chance and they get the spotlight. And
Yeah,
mhm,
yeah. Definitely, definitely agree. I don't think they're needed. I don't think protagonists are needed at all. Um, because if you look at Hunter x Hunter again, a protagonist isn't needed at all in that
exactly.
anime.
And like Teen Titan, I feel like there were like the main cast, but there wasn't like that one protagonist. Robin didn't really take
Yeah,
that much of the screen
Yeah.
time. And I
Yeah,
feel like
they did good.
they
and
did a
like
really good job.
and I know like this one doesn't like I know this one is more silly and doesn't count, but I think SpongeBob is a good example. Like
My
SpongeBob
God.
is not the center of attention of his own show. Every character has their own like story and everything, and I think a lot of people's favorite shows are shows where protagonists aren't necessarily the center of attention.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I think that where we're trying to put a lot of focus is stories where protags are protags, and that's their only role. There's like the supporting cast is there, but they don't really exist. As opposed to like protags where they have a very strong role, but their supporting cast is are just as important. Without them, the story won't go anywhere.
I
Hence
guess
Avatar The Last Airbender, where Aang is the center of attention, but he wouldn't be anything without his friends.
I just feel like
Yeah.
there is such thing as focusing too much on one character. I don't feel like a good story can ever center itself around one character ever because there's so many different types of people. And if your story focuses on one character, only a certain demographic is going to ever really relate to it. But when you have a diverse group of characters that people can project themselves onto, I feel like that's just a healthier, more inclusive way of writing a story. It just feels more relatable. Because if it's just like, oh, it's this one character and he's a nerdy guy. Not everyone's a nerdy guy. Some of us have tits. Some of us get laid. I'm sorry.
Is the way the world is.
I want to say when I was young, I used to really like it when they focused on protagonists because most times I would only watch the loved ones. Like I used to love His and Her Circumstances, and they literally focused on one character the entire time
Mm,
in her love life. And I loved that as a kid because that's all I cared about was love, and because I loved love. so
yeah.
Yeah,
but now I'm a little bit older, and I'm like, I was rewatching it because I bought all the DVDs to that anime, and I was rewatching. I was like, wow, this is intense, and I don't know if it's that good anymore, but it gave me great nostalgia feels.
You know what's one shonen that kind of broke the whole like protagonist gets more powerful trope?
Mhm.
Which
Sailor
one?
Moon. You have the
Ah.
entire cast. You have a whole cast. You don't have just one Sailor Moon that's like the big center of attention. And I feel like
Well,
that's why a lot of people like it.
I heard that Sailor Moon actually has the power to destroy universes, so I don't know how true that is.
She does.
Exactly.
Girl boss.
But I I did
I'm
hear
sorry.
that it's actually good though. They
I'm a
actually
huge
care about the
Sailor Moon
girls.
fan. Huge Sailor Moon fan, and she can. Yes, she's actually Queen Serenity. Um,
Oh my
she's the
god.
queen of the moon. She's the moon queen. She just don't know it yet. But yeah, she's all powerful. All powerful.
All right. The point is, they do care about the other girls though.
Yes, they do. Favorite Sailor Scout was not Sailor Moon growing up. It was probably Mars because I just like how sassy she was. She was really sassy.
Like, I hope I'm not shitting on too many people when I say this, but people who are super into like Batman specifically, and I'm talking to people who only read Batman for Batman. There's many great characters. We have Harley Quinn, we have Poison Ivy. I
Oh,
don't
Mhm.
know about the Joker. He's kind of like gamer rise up guy, and I don't know how I feel about that.
literally the sexiest character apparently, Nightwing.
Nightwing has
Okay.
a ginormous dumpy in the comics. Like, holy,
Fucking everybody loves him apparently.
he's
Crazy.
juicy. Nah, I shouldn't say that on stream. Nah, but he is juicy. Kids don't
Juicy.
No, but
Watch
seriously,
him wearing those fucking sweatpants with juicy on the back of them.
no, but seriously, like I feel like people who are like, "Oh, I love Batman. I only read Batman for Batman." They're kind of always like, I don't know, they don't go outside much. They stay at home all the time. They don't have an experience that's ordinary, and like not shame people who don't have that experience. But most people like they have a different experience. They interact with people, and even the ones that don't interact with people that often still feel like a story has to have different characters. And I don't know, it just never sits right with me when a story is just about one character. It gets boring.
Yep.
You can only
That's
write so
why.
much about one character.
That's why Joker's better than Batman.
Joker is better
Mhm.
written than Batman.
Oh,
At
I
least
love the Joker. Well,
Joker,
I
the
don't
villain,
love
can
him,
be
but yeah, he's a good character.
and Batman refuses to go down on Catwoman. Like, guy's a misogynist. I
Superheroes.
can't believe that was the whole thing on Twitter. Where it's like, I don't go down because I'm not a villain. Like, bro, like why?
Pimp.
It's whatever though. They
It's
took.
hard coded in their DNA, okay?
I
Like a
mean,
superhero DNA contract.
I feel like if you dated Batman, he would be so self-centered and he would never give you like time. And if you ask
Oh,
him for time, he's gonna be like, "You're too needy." Okay, I'm busy
he,
with superhero stuff.
he wears the cowl all the time, no matter what. So
Uh-huh. He's like, the cape stays on during sex. Like, no, thank you. Anyway, moving on to our fifth topic at this point. It's more like the fourth because we did skip over one. What
oh
genre do you
yeah.
like to write about, and what type of character are you more likely to include in said genre? Yeah,
Mhm.
you want to go first?
Mm.
Do you want to
Mm.
start first this time, She?
No. Let
No?
me think.
Okay. It's fine. It's
Let me
fine.
think a
I
little
can go
bit.
ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
My favorite settings are basically like the setting I have for the story I'm writing is like a space fantasy. So kind of like a space opera, but just like a bunch of like creatures, aliens, and humans and stuff.
So, like Mass Effect.
All of the
Yes,
above.
yes, but just like with equal representation for
All the
all the characters.
races.
So like going back to the protagonist topic that we had, the way I'm writing my story and the way I kind of prefer stories to be written is when you follow multiple characters, like you follow everybody, like everybody is impactful to the story. Like you're not just following one group. You're following all the groups, including the antagonists. or quote unquote antagonists. It really depends on how you view the characters. Like, oh, are they really the bad guys? Or are they really the good guys? Everything's just morally gray. That's kind of the way I want to go with the story. So one
Mhm.
way, the characters I'm trying to include to break the mold, like I went at the beginning of this podcast, was I want to try to create characters that normally in other forms of media, like let's say like usually what would you think of like as a villain? Like, oh, this alien that looks intimidating or something. Like usually in some media, it's always like, oh, the humans are the good guys, the aliens are the bad guys. But I would include aliens that you would think would look like bad guys, but they're actually the good guys, or they're at least not necessarily evil, and vice versa with human characters. Like, oh, uh, part of the humans are actually the bad guys, and it's just like the whole viewpoint you have just by observing these different groups and following them that you try to understand through the world. Okay, what's really going on? Like, what are these characters trying to accomplish? So that's what I kind of want to try to go for
You know,
in characters that I create.
speaking of morally gray characters, there's something I do like. I like when a show creates a villain or a quote unquote villain that you can think is the good guy. Up to you to project that. Who do you think is the good person in this story?
Yeah.
There is no definitive, like, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy. I like that because then it becomes like a more inclusive experience, but it can also become a very educational experience because you might be like, you know what? I believe in this person, but by the end of the story, I realize they're kind of a bad person. I have a lot of self-reflecting to do. I like those kind of writings. I think they're a
Mhm.
good way to convey messages.
Mhm.
However, the one thing that doesn't work is when people try to correlate like racism with aliens and stuff, that never works. Because like you have like the one white guy's like, oh my god, they're treating the aliens so terribly. I would never do that as he does
Think they
that.
try to do, like, subtle they try not to make it so obvious that they're speaking about race. I think they only do that because they're just trying to make it subtle that they wanna talk about the struggle of
Yeah,
that
you know
race,
what?
or they try to
You know,
hide it or mask it. But,
you,
it's obvious that they're trying to go for that angle.
And like some people
yeah,
cannot put one on one together. It's
Oh, that's
ridiculous.
sad.
you know what? The Teen Titans actually did it, but they actually like straight up said it that this is what it's about. Because it was you know, an episode about Starfire and this other alien dude who kept calling him calling her racial slurs, you
Yes.
know, in space, whatever. Point
Yeah,
is,
that was
they actually did it well. I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that.
yeah, that's back when they used to do it subtle, but now they just straight up say it. Like, I think I was watching one episode, I think it's a show that's on Cartoon Network called Craig Up the Creek, and dad straight out said he was discriminating against you. Like, he straight out they straight out and say when it's racism. I think Elmo even says it on Sesame Street, tells the kid, "That's racism."
Wow.
I mean, so I know society has changed where we don't sugarcoat it anymore. It's kind of like the movies are like in your face. It's telling you exactly. Oh, he he's racist, or this man is gay. He's gay. Where
Yeah.
in the past it used to be like, oh, this is his lover, and it's like you're like, okay, he has a man lover, and you didn't really think about it. Kind of like in Hey Arnold, you didn't really think about it, but now I'm an adult, and I'm like, oh, he was gay.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
liked how like not totally blatant like, in your face it was. It's just like, oh, they're characters. They exist. That's part of them, but we're not going to put that much attention to it because that's not what the story's about.
I will
Yeah.
say it does make me sad to think about like the effect. Like Steven Universe obviously had like a lot of women loving women representation, and the
Mhm.
Jets, they're all
Yeah,
girls or non-men in a way. And like it was a lot of lesbian and a lot of women loving women just representation. And they had to end the first like part of the show early after what they did in the final episodes. And it makes me sad that because they lost the support of international people, because like the aftermath of colonization, the entire world is like homophobic because of the aftermath of colonization. But this is not a political, well, kind of political. I mean, everything is political. But yeah, it makes me sad to think like when a writer wants to write about their own experience, but if it's too political, they won't get support, and that kind of
Mm.
limits the amount of shows you get to see and the amount of shows that even make it out there. Because at the end of the day, those big companies they only care about what brings them the rating, what brings them the views, the clicks, yada yada
The
yada.
toys. If they don't sell toys, they don't make the bills. So
That was the whole point of Pokemon. Pokemon is the highest grossing brand, 92 billions, just because they can sell so many toys. But
oh,
anyway,
Oh.
back to our
yeah.
topic. We diverted a lot. Um, about the genre you like to write about. I like personally, I like to write about just simple, like daily life, like what is it like to be this type of person or that type of person? Like maybe they're a factory worker, maybe they're an animator, maybe they're an artist, or maybe they're a radio person. I really
Mm.
like those kind of settings. And usually I like to include the really like kick-ass girl. You know, like the girl that's just too cool for everyone. I love that trope.
Yes.
I love that trope. It's so good. Because that girl is like it's a good thing to expose your kids to. Like
Oh,
kids
yes.
don't usually have an assigned gender, at least in the sense of like psychologically. So having like a good women representation that women can be anything can help kids like break the binary in their head and the like norms they were taught. I definitely like there was a point in my life where I was like, "Ugh, I'm a girl, like I can't do this, I can't do that." But those characters helped me break that cycle, and I
Hmm.
really want more of them.
The Janice to the Regina, as it were.
Regina George was
Mhm.
an icon, okay?
We're talking about Janice here.
Janice from
Same thing. Same thing. Mean Girls.
oh yeah,
Janice.
Oh,
I
Janice
forgot.
Ian.
She's literally the girl you're talking about. The cool girl.
I just like the cool. I
Um,
like the
they're
girls
both cool.
because I skateboard, okay?
Both two cool girls.
Yeah, but one of them is damaged.
What about you,
Anyways.
Joe?
Um,
Okay. So you're going on about the other trope you like and the writing scenarios.
It's genre you like to write about, and like what character
Yeah,
would you most likely include?
yeah. Well, I mean, personally, I like go back and forth between situations I like to write about. Like the current story I got right now is it's placed like in a little town, but it's got like supernatural elements to it. I I love sci-fi and fantasy and all that stuff, so I really like to delve into that, powers and all that stuff. And usually characters I put in there are just the normal day-to-day characters, and just have them experience the abnormal and psych them out because I just like to see like have characters completely go through a huge set of emotions. That way it leaves a bigger impact, I guess. Kind of my mindset.
mhm.
What character do you usually include in those?
Well, like I said, the characters, day-to-day characters, not anything special. Just
Just like like a blank slate character that people can just or like you can build up from the
yeah,
ground up.
building up. I build up the characters as they go on. Usually, I don't know what I'm gonna write them out to be. You just go with the flow kind of deal for most of them. Like for some of them, I will have like a set goal, like, oh, this is where I want them to be by the end of the story in this situation. But for the most part, it's just like I'm gonna have them just be in random scenarios together, see where it goes from there. And then sometimes magic happens, sometimes it doesn't. That's just how it works with my stuff.
I do like
Yeah.
how I do like how you develop your characters and how the reader has to kind of figure out what they're about and how they're gonna be. And sometimes, like, I like to predict where they're going. It's fun to just see your interpretation of what this character development can be.
Yeah, I mean it's
Mm.
fun, like especially when people don't guess what's gonna happen to them, and I get to surprise them. That's a good feeling because they're like, "Oh, okay, I did not see that coming." And if they like it, even better. What about you, she?
So I haven't wrote anything since I was very young. But I think when I
Oh,
used to write a character, I would like to see what they can bring to the story and not
mhm.
just like throw away characters. Like I'm not just making a character just to have her there for a couple of episodes or storylines and then throw away. She has a purpose. Everybody has a purpose in my story, and
Yeah.
that's what I like to do. But I do help. I do help my boyfriend sometimes develop some characters, um, but not really anything recent. I He kind of goes with his own flow on his little thing.
Yeah, totally. What about like, do you have like certain genres you like writing into, or is it just whatever he goes in at the moment?
So I think one of his most recent is I think it's like this character. It's like a patriarchy based on like a fighting between a few of her husbands,
Mm,
and I'm trying to think what else he it was because he asked me about like a personality of of, of one of the husbands. Like, what did I think about it?
mm. So like, um, do you think you like more like down to earth stories then, or like fantasy ones?
I think I prefer. I think I prefer fantasy.
Yeah.
Um, than I do down to earth. I think I prefer. I'm trying to think. I used to write more down to earth, but I think I prefer fantasy. Like,
Like you like the
especially,
witches and mages and all that, or
yeah, I like that, but I don't like that in movies. I don't know. I can read a story about witches and all that and aliens, but movies it kind of scares me.
I feel like
But the story is different.
I get you. Well, that's cool.
I feel like with sci-fi, you're erasing any form of like real life limitation, and it allows you for more room to just write scenarios that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do, and you're able to
Mhm.
capture, well, in my opinion, deeper emotions because sometimes the most craziest things in a sci-fi show could just like make you feel the strongest things. And I've definitely like cried really hard at Steven Universe because he was able to capture a lot of emotions in a way that isn't really describable in real life, you know?
Hmm.
That's what I like about sci-fi really. It's that openness, is that like just being it's like the open blanket that you get out of writing in sci-fi.
You're not
Mhm.
locked to real life
You get to make your own rules. You
limitations.
get to build the universe around you. Where if you're making like a real life, you're already taking a world that exists with its own rules, and you're just writing stories in it, which is cool.
Yeah.
But world building is such a cool concept, and getting to discover different words and how they function is cool. I think one of the reasons why shonens make it so big is because every universe has all these new rules that you kind of want to figure out.
Yeah. If you can world build, you are good at writing because that's
Exactly.
hard.
Even like building on a small scale, like, oh, this is Jerry, and he takes the bus at this time because the bus goes at this and that, and like, but like you make up a different scenario. And it's not like how regular buses work. Like even the simplest things can make a huge impact.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, this
Yes.
is our last topic before the Q&A. Um,
Alrighty.
well, we did skip over one topic.
Yeah, but I think we've done a good time.
I mean, we did good. Sometimes we get diverged too much into something,
That's how it is.
especially if I say certain triggers. I know certain topics that can make these two talk forever, but
Mm.
I'm not doing it unless I feel
Okay.
like it. Don't make me do it. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, number one is
I mean, I'm like, a topic? What what's a trigger?
it, it's like you know when like you talk to an introvert and you tell them a certain things and they just start talking. They don't stop talking. Those are the triggers. Okay,
Yeah.
so what do you think is really important to include when writing like when the read you want to captivate a reader? What do you feel as a reader captivates you into continuing to watch something, and how do you stay interested? Like, how do you have you noticed any patterns where the writer kept you interested using certain things?
Hmm.
Okay,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think I think I can go first for this one.
Well,
I think for me personally, when I read a story, if they introduce high consequences off the bat to like what's gonna happen, I think that intrigues me a lot because I want to see right off the bat, like, oh, what's gonna happen to this character, and not the kind of where it's like, oh, how did I get here? Let's go 3 weeks back to how that happened. Nothing like that. No, it's more like, oh, here's a consequence of the world. You might encounter that later. Now follow the story for this character, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to see what happens if they encounter this. I think that kind of like keeps me invested into a story. Alright, well, who's next?
Good one. Uh, I feel like when writing a story, like I said, I think I've said this about the subplots. Mysteries are really captivating. People have a lot of curiosity, and when you create a lot of like mysteries and reasons to want to find out of why these mysteries are like so mysterious, like, oh, I can't go because my dad and I are doing this thing, and it's like, what is this thing? And it's like never explained. And character does this thing with their father every night, and you're just captivated by that idea and you're speculating theories. And I guess like that's why murder mysteries can get so well, because like those mysteries, they just are really captivating, and I feel like they're a really good way of keeping the watchers interested. However, cliffhangers are not a good way to keep people watching. It's just
Oh,
cliffhangers
yeah.
are balling.
Hate
Okay.
those.
Well, okay, I have a tangent because it's like cliffhangers can be good if you don't extend the wait time to watch the next episode or read the next book. Because if you extend it for more than like 2 days, you're not gonna want to keep watching or whatever. Because we live in an age where everything's in your hand, and you're like, well, come on, I want
I
to watch what's next already.
I hate it. I really hate it when the cliffhanger is the very final episode of like that season. I'm supposed to wait for the next season? What am I supposed to
I get that. Yeah, I get that.
do? Like it is like it's literally like making someone smell the most delicious food and they're hungry. And you just tell them, you know what? I'll give you that food tomorrow. Like what the hell? What am I supposed to eat?
I will say though, if it's a cliffhanger that is after a really good moment of the story, I don't mind it as much
Yeah,
because
because
it's not the zinger of the episode. It's like the cherry on top kind of deal, where it's like, oh, you expected nothing more after this fight. Here's this instead. I'm like,
I
what?
think
What?
Stranger Things did a good job with it. It's like, oh, we just had this big climax and things are good, but oh, there's still more. And
Yeah,
that's fine. But when it's like, oh, who's gonna win this like big event, or Is she gonna break up with him or something like
like
that?
like
And it's like
like imagine
consecutive
for
scenes.
Dragon Ball Z if the Goku and Frieza arc just ended abruptly before Namek explodes. And they're
Yeah.
like, okay,
Been
wait till
terrible.
the next season for the conclusion of whatever that was. I don't think I would have
Yeah.
kept watching if that happened.
Mm, makes sense. Yeah. No. I like relatable reasons. Like
Uh,
that keeps me watching.
Before we continue, we have a question from a fan, Yushi. Hey all, great episode of Cheheaven. I'm a fan of your cosplays. So to tie it into the storytelling theme, do you consider the story of the animes or shows you cosplay from? That was the question. I'm assuming like what is the best story from like shows you cosplay from? Like what's your favorite? I'm assuming.
Uh, well, I mean, every character that I cosplay, they're all my favorites, and that's why I cosplay them. Um, I
Same.
relate to them.
Except the Lightning
And
McQueen one. That one was a joke. Let's not talk
wait,
about.
which one?
I did a Lightning McQueen one. You remember the bikini? It was cute.
That one's cute. I like that. Um, um, I, I don't know.
Can't really pick
A
a
good.
favorite.
It's a little hard for me because I like them all.
Your Raven cosplay looks amazing, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. Um, trying to think. Wait, what was the question again?
But what I gather is basically which of those characters you cosplayed had a cool story that you really, really, really like.
um,
Consider it what?
so going back to nostalgia feeling, it would probably be Kikyo from Inuyasha. I love her backstory. I love her strength and resilience. Like you think that when you first were introduced to her as, she was brought back from the dead, you've seen her as this vengeful woman, and you're just trying to figure out why she's attacking this character that you've grown to love. And then you realize that they had this whole life together, and you realize how she had to do this shrine priestess, all this work at such a young age and so much responsibility. And then she finds love, and then she tragically thinks that this person the only person she loves has betrayed her. And you feel for her, and you're like, wow, this is an amazing character. Wow, I love her.
Mm,
Love that character so much.
cool. All right.
Okay.
Well, there you go. That's the answer to that
So
question.
I think I interrupted you abruptly for this question, but you were gonna talk about something about cliffhangers and how
No,
like
no, no. She was talking about just relatable things.
Yeah,
go for it.
that's that's my favorite type of thing that happens. Like when they give me a reason why to keep watching is something relatable. I'm like, okay, that's why that main character is doing it. It's because of
Yeah,
this. It
I would
brings
say
in elements of a great story.
pandering a lot in stories where like, oh, they picked up a glass cup of tea tinted color with all that stuff. When they do that, I cannot stay invested in a story. Like,
I will
I
say
get it, you're explaining it, but it's so
Yeah.
much.
Like
actually. Mhm.
for me, one simple way to keep me in a story is have your cast at least be likable. That's one way. You don't want to have you don't want to follow these characters you don't care about. And also, if you're gonna have antagonists in your story, I feel like writers do a good job if you make your readers want to see those antagonists go down. I feel that's the best way to hook me, at least. Like I know, like this is a video game, but Persona 5, like one of the first villains, it's like you just want to see him fall. You want to see the protagonist just take him down. Like I think that's a very important aspect in keeping some readers interested
Yeah.
in the stories.
I feel like the same can be said for the opposite. when you have a villain you're rooting for.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I
I
will
think
Like
that
I
say,
know.
answers.
uh, I feel like trauma and explaining like a character trauma in an episode or something to explain part of their story, amazing, awesome. However, when it's done to justify like a shitty behavior, like, oh, this villain kills people because their mom didn't like them when they were little, like, what the hell? Like, who
When they were 1 years
tried
old,
to
their
divide
mama
them up?
said no to a cone of ice cream, therefore they kill.
Like, am I supposed to
Yeah,
be bad? Like, I don't care if your mom abused you. That doesn't mean you get to kill people.
yeah. Those
You
those ones are pretty weird.
you don't understand. She used to beat me up. Like, yeah, that's terrible. Go to therapy. Don't kill people.
Justified? Not
It's like
really.
they try to gain sympathy, but what they don't realize is that, like, even people who are traumatized, yes, they're victims, but victims can also be oppressors in some cases, and that's one of the cases. Like, the villain is the worst person in the show, or at least they're trying to make them the worst person. I will say,
Mm-hmm.
I want to diverge into different topics since we don't have any more topics. I want to talk about favorite like characters. I don't have a particularly one favorite character, but I have my favorite duo, Team Rocket from Pokemon.
You
I
gotta
love them.
love
They're
fucking.
they're an icon. They add so much to the show. They add so much to the story. Yes, they're supposed
um,
to be like one gag where they kind of disrupt everything, but every time they show up, it's like exciting because they're just they have
okay,
so glam to them.
I'm just gonna add, woohoo! When he does that, you know it's the best. You know,
Yes, I do.
uh,
I
James is he's an icon.
It's great, and,
They're
like,
both
their
an icon.
intro, everything that they do, like, I love that, like, I love that, yes, they're not necessarily essential, and they are just, like, villains that just aren't that important to the story, but they're a good addition. They really add up to the
Psh,
story.
they are important. What are you talking about? They're like the highlight of the episode. Their mottos are everything.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes they are the highlight of an entire episode, and I like that. I like villains that are actually like relatable and likable, and they're not like villains because they're just morally bad. They're villains because they just don't like the protagonist, and sometimes I agree. Like, screw that damn kid.
Plus, they were the original cross-playing queen and queen king.
Right? Right? Like, they're so inspirational. Like, James is full on androgyny. It's so inspiring. Like, we love that
Not
for him.
just James, Jessie too. She was all up in tuxes and everything all the time.
Yeah, Jesse's like attractive as hell when she cross dresses. Like, it's great. But yeah, like those are like great additions in terms of like for me, like what makes the story really appealing. I feel like Pokemon wouldn't have the same appeal if it wasn't for Team Rocket.
Oh yeah, no. If Team Rocket wasn't there, I don't think I would have watched this long as I did.
What about you guys? What do you think is like a good addition? Like what's a character that like you can add to a story and it'll like make it 10 times better?
Hmm.
Thinking on that right now. I mean, I just feel like the way One Piece adds new crew members, and not too many. Like each crew member they add just has such an impact on like the whole. It's like a family. It's like a family that's being built slowly, and like my favorite One Piece character is Frankie, and he just has like this really cool energy to him. Like at first, he didn't think he would have been. Like he starts kind of antagonistic, but later on, he becomes a really cool guy. Like he just learned more about him, and he just adds like this energy to the main cast, and he's just hilarious. Like he knows how to fight, but he's also funny at the same time. Like
Oh,
he's not
yes,
just a
those are
comic
good.
relief character. Yeah,
Really good. I like a good villain, like a likable, sinister villain that you kind of love them, but you also hate them. Those are
yeah.
always great
Totally.
additions.
You got any examples that you like?
Like a villain that I hate, that I love to hate.
Yeah.
Mm,
I know Hisoka's one of them for me.
oh
Because
yes, he's
of
Hisoka
good.
from
Hunter x Hunter.
Hunter, Hunter,
oh,
yeah, he's a villain, but you just kind of love him because he's
He's
I don't know,
so out there, but you love it, you know?
yeah, he's a good one. Um, let's see, when I'm recently
I like
watching.
the B guy from the Venture Bros. He's funny.
Mm.
And like his wife with her really deep voice, she's great. Like
Yeah.
she's one of my favorite characters.
Cycling like non-anime, I think the Joker is a really good one. Like I kind of like him,
True.
but I hate him. Like I hate what he
Yeah.
does to people, but I kind of love how smart and clever he does things. Like he gets in people's heads, and it's genius and
He
just.
has good motives. Like his motives aren't just like I'm evil for the sake of being evil. And I feel like that's very
Mhm.
important when it comes to writing villains, especially when, like if they're I feel like bad guys for the sake of being bad, they get old really quick. You watch one show that has that, and then you kind of grow up, and then you realize people have motivations and feelings too, and that just because you have the label of a villain doesn't mean you're actually a bad person. So you just kind of grow into this idea of, okay, so what is their motive? I feel like motives are very important, and it's like one of the
Hmm.
most essential things to writing a character. What's their motive to be the character that they are? Why are they a part of the show? And if their motive is kind of ambiguous and it's just never really there, it's just kind of boring.
Yeah, I was
Like,
really mad at the Hunter x Hunter trope of the. I know the ant arc. It's like really big, but in the beginning it started off super slow, and I was really upset because I was trying to figure out what the villain's motive was. I was like, are they just killing people just to kill people? And then finally they gave me a reason. I was like, okay, this is much better.
Yeah, reason makes everything for any story, honestly.
Yeah, like give me a reason. Why are you doing this? Like, why are you just killing people just to kill people? What are you doing?
let
Hmm.
me
Um,
understand their perspective. Like, holy hell.
like, why are
Humanize
you
your
doing?
character.
Yes, humanize them.
Give us a reason to like to hate.
Yeah, like basically. Also, like, sometimes shows don't necessarily need a villain. Like, Teen Titan never really had, like, the main villain, in a sense.
They kind of did.
That was Slade.
It was Slade, but he was like always in the background,
He was more of
honestly.
Who's
a
Slade?
subplot villain, in a sense.
Like he had a climax against the Titans and everything, but it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna put all our effort to just this guy.
What was his reason? I don't know what his reasoning was. Was he just hurting them just to hurt them,
He
or?
had a fucking hate to love to hate boner with Robin. It was
Oh yeah, he
weird.
thought he was cool, so he just wanted to fight him, just to fight him.
Yeah, I don't. He was a predator. That's what he was.
I like when they got in depth behind, like, Raven's story in the show, because, like, introducing, like, her family and where she came from and, like, why she kind of, like, her trauma. I feel like those are always, like, good moments in shows, and I feel like Raven wouldn't be people's favorite character if she didn't have so much like story
Yeah,
behind her, so much good writing, trauma,
she,
like good, bad things that happened to her.
I do
Her
think she was the best written character in that show.
She's tied with Starfire for
She
me.
really is.
I love Starfire because I just like her happy nature.
Yeah.
yeah, I think
um,
I think loose end characters are just terrible. They add nothing. Sometimes they make the
Oh my
story
god.
worse. It's like, why are they like this? Why do they do this? Why are they even a part of the show? Like, why are they such a big loose end?
You mean Tara?
Tara
I love
from
Tara.
from
Oh
Teen
my god.
Titans. I loved Tara until like they didn't
yeah.
end her story right, and I was like, oh my god, how could you do this to me?
Well, it's I feel like that one was all Cartoon Network's fault because it was
Totally.
the series was literally supposed to end with Raven finding her homeworld, destroying her father, and that was supposed to be the end of the series. But Cartoon Network was like, "No, we need another episode," and the creators were like, "Okay,
Don't
we'll
got
give you
anymore.
trash.
Yeah.
We'll give you trash. We wanted it to end like that, and it would have been a perfect ending, but they just had to do that, and then they got
Seriously.
canceled. We
Like
never know."
like speaking about Teen Titans, like another trope that I like is when you have like a antagonist end up becoming like a good guy. So I really liked towards the end of Teen Titans. Spoilers, anybody? I really liked when Jinx ended up going to the good
I
side,
know. That was
and
cool. That was
that
really
was a
cool.
really nice payoff to watch.
Oh, she's cute.
She is cute.
It's
I
really
like her.
cute. Speaking of, there was a show, I think like Suicide Squad had a show, and the show's all about like the life of villains, and it's really funny. It has really good moments. I've seen a couple of clips of it. I never really got to see it, but just seeing Harley Quinn being the center of attention, it's a nice change of pace. Sometimes give the villains like their own show. Like I don't mind, especially if they're a very well written character. I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes watching the stories of like a bad person that you don't necessarily agree with can be fun because you're never gonna like necessarily relate to it, but you're curious. Like, why do you act that way? And it's entertaining. Harley Quinn has just a really entertaining personality.
It's not just her either. Her supporting cast is really good.
They
Poison
are.
Ivy's in there, and she's really good. I like her.
I really
Mm.
need to watch it though.
Me too.
Where is that streaming at? I gotta
Is it
check it out.
HBO? I don't know. There's too many streaming systems now.
I just love HBO though. I'm a big HBO go HBO Max fan. I've been using HBO for everything now.
Mm.
Now I have never none of us have ever watched Game of Thrones, but everyone keeps saying that the ending was bad. Like it was the
Oh
worst thing
yeah,
in history.
I
And I'm
heard that
like,
they really butchered the last season.
I feel like that's kind of what happens when you hype up a show too much, or like sometimes you can put really high expectation on a show or like a
Well,
series.
no, what I heard from that season is that they made characters do things that were out of character. That's why it butched so
Mm,
hard. Because like when you
I
do
see.
that, you take away their personality, like who they were and what they did, what they did.
You know, there is something that can make your story better. It's like setting expectations. I think it's very important to set the expectation a little lower than what the actual quality is, because this way the reader is more impressed with the story when something that is not expected happen, you know?
Oh yes, definitely something like that
Oh,
happened in One Piece when I was watching it recently.
I feel like if
Like just to give an example, I won't say exactly what it, but like I'll just give like a general idea in case not to spoil too much. But let's say there's one character that's always jokey, they have like a gimmick whenever they interact with this character, but at that point in the story, it was a very, very, very serious moment, and you would think, oh, they're interacting with that character again. They're gonna show the gimmick, but no, that character was just like dead serious the entire time, which was just like a shocker, like a whoa,
like this
like
must be serious.
shit's actually happening. Like that was just a really strong little moment in one
Yeah,
of the.
I mean, I think that happens a lot with comic relief characters too. Like, oh, the comic relief character is joking. Must not be a serious moment. Oh, look, comic relief character is dead serious and not joking at all. This means that the story is in a very serious moment. It's like, don't mess
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is there
Yeah.
anything you want to add on to that, she?
Um, Game of Thrones. For Game of Thrones, right?
For
'Cause
anything.
Or anything.
oh, because I'm like I really didn't watch Game of Thrones, but my
Same.
boyfriend did, and he said it was like lazy writing the very last season at
Yeah.
best. It was like it was really lazy. Like they were just like, all right, we're gonna just do this, and we're
Yeah,
done.
Oh, I actually have a good example. Well, I know you don't play video games. You know about the whole Kingdom Hearts 3 thing. The game took more than a decade for it to come out, and
Mhm.
people had super high expectation of it, and it just didn't deliver on that. And I feel like sometimes that can be a big factor in whether or not you can quote unquote write a good story. Because sometimes you can make a good game or a good show, and the next season completely botch because you didn't meet the expectation your audience have. And I think that's like a toxic part of communities is
the,
overhyping things.
it
Like,
totally
Yeah.
is. Because, like, first of all, the first Kingdom Hearts is like the story is cohesive. You can understand it. After that, it goes all over the place, everywhere, like literally.
Yeah,
Once
it
you
didn't
get,
end when it
yeah,
needed to.
see, yeah, and then like I don't know why people expected to number three to be like the saving grace, all best story told ever.
tie everything
When
together when they have so
yeah,
many
when
loose.
like the when the previous stories themselves were like all over the place too. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I think
Like
it's
I know for Kingdom Hearts 3, because I played it too. I finished it like a couple years ago. For me, I guess it's just the fact that the story doesn't end necessarily like on a like the story it ties up like pretty much the whole trilogy.
yeah,
Like a lot of loose ends are tied up. Like there's just such a bunch of like big events just happening moment after moment. Like
that's true.
you don't really have time to breathe because everything's just happening. And the way the game ends, I feel for some fans, it's not a 100% satisfying ending if you know the part I'm talking about.
Okay,
Hmm.
I will say though, and this is like a very general question. Do loose ends need a climax? Do like part of the plot need a climax? Is it okay if a part of the plot never reaches its climax and that's it?
Yes, I think sometimes depending on the story you're writing, it's totally acceptable to not have complete conclusions to all loose ends. Like it's like especially if you're writing a mystery novel or
It's
Yeah.
okay
whatever,
to
I
have
feel
an
like
open ending where people can assume what happened or assume that what could possibly happen.
yeah, or like a horror novel where you'd rather prefer the loose ends to be there so that it gives a sense of like nothing being completed
Dread.
and these characters aren't actually safe or something like that, you know? I think it depends on the story.
I feel like it depends on the type of story and also how much you're talking about that plot point.
I feel like
Because
loose ends are also like a lazy way for writers to kind of give themselves potentials to write something. If they ever get into like a writer block, they're like, okay, I'll leave this at a loose end, and if I get stuck on the story, I'll go back to this plot. And I feel like Kingdom Heart kind of did that too much, and that's how you end up with a lot of loose ends and not really like a satisfying conclusion.
yeah, like Kingdom Hearts 3, it could have had like the perfect like a really good ending, but they did something where it's like, oh,
Yeah, I totally butchered it at the
there's
end.
still more. It would have been like the perfect conclusion to the trilogy, I feel at least, but I can understand why some fans aren't happy about how it ended.
What about
Yeah.
you, Shi? Do you have any thoughts about like loose ends and whether or not they should have their conclusions and what do you think about them in general?
I really hate cliffhangers. I really want the story to be wrapped up. Like, tell me what happens next. I hate when they just kind of when they'll create a character, but they'll introduce those characters to us, and then they don't tell us what happened to them. Like, what happened to them? What's going on? Like, we're gonna forget that they didn't exist. And that's a really good character. I'm gonna say Hunter x Hunter always does a great job of always wrapping up the story of the characters that are faced in there. Like you'll see them later, and
Right.
you'll know what happened to them if they
So,
died or if they're still doing it, still doing being a hunter. Trying to
so
think of
what
a
you're
bad
saying is
example.
you're saying it's essential to tie up those loose ends, huh?
Yes, for me it is.
I get that.
So you're not a huge fan of open endings, huh?
No,
Like,
not really. Not really. I'm trying to think of if there's
do you
an
have any
example where
particular reason why you don't like it? Is it the feeling of it? Is it you thinking that it's not your place to assume what's gonna happen next? Like, what is it that you feel that particularly makes you hate open endings?
I just have a lot of questions. Like it leaves me feeling when I feel like I don't know what happened to that character, I get confused and I'm like, I don't like this.
She
It
basically
makes me
wants a conclusion.
I want to know what happened. Please tell me they had a happy ending or if
Yeah.
what happened to them.
Exactly.
My imagination will not run wild with it. It'll just send me into a wormhole.
You want a bow tie
Like,
on a
like,
present.
like, I feel like when One Piece finally ends, I'm really hoping that there's an actual definitive conclusion. Like, I don't know how I would feel if they just had like they find like what the One Piece is after like over 1,000 something episodes, like being that invested into the story, and then it's like they don't even show what it was or like what happens to the main cast after they find it. Like, I want to have a definitive conclusion because I've been so invested in the story. I feel like in a story like that, I need an ending. Like, I don't know how I would feel if it's just like, oh, it just cuts to black.
Mm,
It'd be so funny if they did the trope where the treasure was the friendship we made along the
Oh my
way.
god.
It'd be so funny.
or was it? Dun dun dun.
Oh my god, people would be so pissed. Imagine watching 1,000 episodes. Like, we're talking 20, like, freaking, like a month worth of episodes. And you're
Sure.
just like, oh, the ending is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I don't
so
know.
many missing pieces.
I feel like
Sometimes you can
conclusions
have like,
are needed.
sometimes you can have
Like
a cake with good toppings, and you eat the cake and you don't like the toppings, so you just kind of get rid of them. I
oh,
feel like the ending is kind of like it, as long as the journey was good. If the journey is bad and the ending is good, then you're not gonna watch the show. It's not gonna be a pleasant experience.
Mhm.
I feel like look back to all the scary movies you've watched. How many of them end with the bad guy opening their eyes or turning their head or reaching their hand out of the grave,
Mm.
leading up
Yeah, a
to
lot of them.
sequels? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
those are the movies that are leading up to, so you'll know that there will be a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So like I feel like sometimes those can work. Not all the time. Definitely there's
yeah,
some that are just
sometimes
so
those
dumb.
movies don't get sequels.
They
Yeah.
don't. And then you're like, oh, okay, so this guy's just running amok in the world, but we'll never see it.
I guess that's
But yeah,
fine, you know.
yeah. We'll just leave him be. Murderous psychopath just out there somewhere. All right.
All right, any topics you guys want to talk about or anything before we start like concluding this?
Hmm. Nothing really comes to mind.
To say,
I don't really have anything else to add. Do we have any questions from the viewers?
Not at the moment. Think it's about time we wrap it up though. I will say thank you, She, for joining us. Um,
thank
it was a
you. Thank
pleasure.
you for having me, guys.
It was super fun.
Great
Wait, hold
talking to
on.
you.
Go back to a video game topic. Which one are you talking about?
Oh my
I was
gosh.
talking about the oh, is it the topic we had to skip over? What games that had a story that's more compelling than the game itself? Like, is that the one that you're talking about?
Hmm.
Oh, well, I don't know. Like, for me, it's Undertale because the gameplay wasn't like huge. It was like just a generic RPG, but the story had so much flavor and depth into it that I was just kind of invested all the time in the story, and I feel like Undertale would not have been as a huge success if it wasn't for the story writing and the fact that you get like four different endings, or was it three? I think it was three. You get
3.
three endings,
Well,
and
technically, you get multiple depending on what you do. It's all about what
oh, and what's
text
your
box you want
previous
to read
end?
at the end. But
Like,
yeah.
yeah, there's like so many ways you can delve into that game, and so many endings that it just felt like very well written. Like nobody ever remembers Undertale for its immaculate gameplay, unless we're talking about that one fight with Sans.
Yeah, no, whenever people think about Undertale, all they think is
Yeah.
that's it.
That's it. That's it. But like the story itself is what makes Undertale Undertale, you know?
Pretty much.
Like it's a game that's entirely about the narrative. And even if you don't play video games, it's still a game that anyone can just play. You don't even need like a fancy computer. It's a pixelated game.
Mhm.
I don't know. Jack, you got
Like, like as for me, I mean, just aside from like visual novels, because visual novel games like Danganronpa are more like story than actual gameplay. But not counting those, I'd probably say games like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, like Xenoblade 1, Xenoblade 2. Like those were really games I just remember the story so much, especially like the Xenoblade 2 side story, the Torna, the Golden Country. That like towards the ending, they like I was so invested into the just some of the characters like I actually like teared up a little bit towards the end of the game. I feel like games that make you have that much of an emotional impact on the story make you remember those games. Like I know the Telltale games, Walking Dead season 1,
Totally.
that's a game that definitely made me tear up.
Oh, I bawled crazy.
um
Like those games.
I will say Xenoblade had amazing gameplay. Like it's fun to play.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Xenoblade 2's gameplay and Torna's gameplay was I really liked the gameplay once I figured out how the combat system worked, but I especially remember the story
I
too.
think what made it so good was the world building. It was so like rich, and it felt so
Yeah.
intriguing to want to find out what's happening. And if you and like the way you find out about the story is by like actually going and exploring. Sure, you have a linear main story path, but you can go different directions and find out what happened in this area and that area, and that's really cool. That's one of my favorite things about the Xenoblade games is
Yeah, and then in 2 you get to learn more about the blades. There's the blade side quests where you get to get more story, more world building on them.
Mm.
Like
Mhm.
and really it's one of those worlds where I really want to learn more about drivers and blades and all that, which makes me really curious how Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is going to be because 1 and 2 are
different
they're
characters.
different. There's no blades in 1.
Also, Jack, did you have a game in mind?
Well, yeah, I mentioned it earlier back when we skipped the topic, but I mean, I go back to this game a lot. No, I've done it before in a different episode, but I really liked the way the Last of Us played out because yeah, sure, the gameplay is nothing to be excited about. I mean, it's fun here and there, but like I was so invested into these characters that I just wanted to see how the whole story played out in the entire time, and just like the little interactions that they do here and there, they like just between levels. It's like, oh, these characters feel like they're alive, and all these chats and talks they have. They just really made me, want these characters to succeed and get to where they're
Mm.
going,
Yeah, I
even
kind
though
of
they
want to
just
divert from that a little bit. I think when The Last of Us came out, a lot of people were speculating interactive movies because that's what that game felt like. And I guess my question is if there was like, say, this one anime, and you get to choose how the story goes, and each time you choose, like, it's a different episode. Like, oh, if you choose this path, you get this like different set of episodes, and you can rewatch it to see the other options. Would you think that would be like a good idea for a show? What do
I
you think?
think it could be, but also that's a hell of a lot of work.
It is. It would be a
Yes.
lot of work. But shows like One Piece, where they released 900 episodes, if they can formatted that way, that'd be really interesting.
My God, imagine a whole nother different alternate for universe of One Piece.
Jesus, imagine! Oh
A
my goodness.
different 1,000 episodes to watch.
Or maybe it's like 3 universes and each universe has 300 episodes. Like that wouldn't be still a lot of episodes to go through, but it'll be cool. It'll be cool. I don't know. She, what do you think?
Um, trying to think.
Me too.
We all think here. There's no thinking aloud. We just do.
No thinking aloud. I did have something to add when about video. I did used to play a PC game
Oh yeah?
called The Sims.
Oh, The
That's the
Sims.
only video game. Yeah, I used to play The Sims, but I don't
Oh
have a
yeah.
desktop anymore to
Me too.
do that. Play that on my little laptop can't handle The Sims anymore,
Oh, I feel you
and
so
that
much right now.
that was more of like a free form game. I prefer games like that where I build my own
Yeah.
character.
Ah,
Um,
okay. That makes sense. You know, you like writing stories, so that makes sense.
yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, writing your own story. I think that's probably why I liked it. And I haven't really played any other games, but I will say
You
that
should try
multi.
visual novels. They're pretty good at doing that.
What up, what up? She had it going. What was it?
Oh, I was gonna say multiverse animes would multiverse anime would be cool. That would be
Yes.
really cool.
Yeah. Multiverse anime.
Yeah, those
That
would
would be
be.
sick.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Would it be lazy if like they really re-release the first season of Naruto, but it's like a different universe where something else happens? I don't think so. I think more people would watch that than Boruto or whatever the
You
hell
know,
that's called.
I had some similar concept back in high school when I was drawing out a comic, and then
Like,
I
what if
had this
Sasuke was
like
actually like the good guy? I don't know.
I was showing it to my friends, and it was like a choice at the end. I was like, "Hey, which
Yeah, I
side of
remember
the
that.
comic you want to watch?" And then I realized that was a terrible idea because I had to draw the entire thing 2 times,
Yeah,
and then it was bad. I ended up not even finishing that
Mm,
story because I couldn't.
like it's
mm,
such a it's a very neat concept. It's so much work. Like you
It's
just see
so hard practice.
like you see games that are like free choice games, but at the end of the day, it's all gonna wind up to be the same thing.
Yeah,
mm,
Hmm.
Like The Walking Dead
There
season one.
it is.
like yeah. I mean, like it's just the thought like of, oh, this is going to be a completely different story if you choose that or this, but we have to put the effort into making both of those stories. It's like, oh my
Yeah,
God,
it's a lot
wow,
of work.
do you really want to go down that path? Because it's going to be a long path.
It's admirable, but it's a big commitment.
It really is. So even though it sounds amazing, I wouldn't put it to practice.
Okay, question for she. Would you rewatch like the special 12 episode show of Hunter x Hunter if it was just from Hisoka's perspective and like his
Oh my God,
people who worked with?
I would.
yeah. I want to get into that man's mind. It's kind of
Seriously.
it'll probably be like how they did the Joker. Like you're kind of like the whole Joker movie.
Yeah,
You'll get into how he
except
was. Go ahead. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
except no, I'm just gonna say except they'll be more like and all those noises, you know.
Oh yeah. Ah,
Uh,
he's such an interesting character to where I
flamboyant
think
even.
I think it'll be a good movie to watch.
I would
Yeah,
totally.
like I don't know. I guess spin-offs are an idea of what I'm talking like there's already spin-offs. I don't think the format I'm thinking of is too crazy. Like it'd be cool as a concept. Like, what if it's
Yeah,
the same show? It's like a 24 episode show, but it's like a one season show. One of those shows that end early, but there's another season and it's from a different perspective.
Oh well, there's
yeah,
there's this the new Pokemon movies that are coming out. There's like a whole different universe that they're being played in.
Oh
Like it's
yeah.
still the same story where Ash gets Pikachu and they go out on an
Hmm.
adventure, but he doesn't meet um Brock or Misty or any of them. It's a completely different story.
Mm,
So it's kind of
yeah.
interesting.
It's like it's
Yeah,
not
it is.
it's less alternative universe and it's more like alternative path choices or at least
like
the path is.
Yeah.
like one thing I want to do with my story is let's say okay, you watch this little arc or you read this little arc that follows group A, but then I do the story again, but you're following group B this time. Well, the same events of group A are happening, but you're having the perspective of group B.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can have group C, like what's going on with group like F, like way far away, while the same thing is happening with group A and group B. Like, is that what you're kind of getting at too?
Like a different perspective,
Yes, but the
or
same thing is happening. You're
yeah,
just
same
getting more of the
storyline,
other.
just
Yeah,
different perspective.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. I was thinking like something like combining like a hit cartoon adult show with like an anime, kind of like Rick and Morty meets like One Piece or Naruto. I think that'll be really cool.
Oh my god.
That's combining the two fandoms.
like yeah, like one thing I really want to do with my story writing is let's say okay, the quote unquote good guys are going to fight the quote unquote bad guys. You're going to get some of the what the good guys are up to that point, and then what the bad guys are up to at that point. It's not going to just be you just see what the good guys are doing and then they fight the bad guys. You'll see what the bad guys are feeling and thinking as well before both groups meet up.
And then you
Mm-hmm.
get to choose which side you're on. I like that story writing. It's one of my favorites because it creates a more dynamic story rather than just a very linear story. And I
A
feel like
very one-sided story.
linear
Yeah.
stories are fine, but they get mundane after a while. And I don't know. I guess there's so many ways to write things, but at the end of the day, it's all about the consumer, right? And how you like your stories.
Yeah.
And I like to conclude this entire podcast by saying, well, thank you, She, for showing up.
Hello.
Pleasure to
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bearing our nonsensical talks here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I I didn't want to really diverse into video game stuff because I know I want you to feel included and you are more of the center of this conversation, but alas, things well, people wanted us to talk about it, so
It is in the name of the podcast. We are sorry that you had to bear with us.
No,
it was
I
a
know
pleasure
about
to
some
have you.
gaming. I know about
You
some
got it. You
games.
got it. Just give it time. You'll get into it.
We went with a flow. It was good. It was good.
Okay. Any last parting words from anyone?
Just thank you for watching, everyone.
Yeah,
Oh
thanks.
yes. Yes, this was fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you again,
Totally.
Shi. Thank you so much. It was very fun talking with you.
I'm
Yes,
talking to y'all.
we have fun here. That's what we do.
We do. Until one of us fucks up and decides that their camera ran out of battery and they didn't.
I think it's time to end the podcast. That is said and done.
Oh well, it is what it is.
Oh.
And I'm dead. That's it. I think
Oh.
yeah.
I was like, what happened? Did I freeze again?
Nuh-uh. That's just me running out of battery. Well, it's time to end the stream. Thank
That's
you
good
everyone
to
for showing up. I'm speaking to you from the void. I am no longer a face. Uh,
welcome.
and just thank you for even showing up. I know we haven't done this in 3 months, and a lot of things happened, but I'm happy that we finally went back into doing this. This is a really fun thing that we usually do.
Yeah, we hope to keep seeing you guys. And thank you.
Yeah, thank
Of
you.
course. And I'm gonna check out those stories.
Hey,
Do.
totally.
You guys
I'll make sure to keep on checking those awesome cosplays of yours too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
You can check out Cheheavens at Cheheavens on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, any other platforms by chance?
No, that's it.
Check out Jack the Thinker or Thinking Like Jack, depending on the platform.
yes.
It's
I
But
mostly
think I went in and followed everybody.
ooh,
us.
gonna
Yes.
take my
And
tweet off.
you can follow Noivren if you're into F-Zero or
At
Alligator.
Des Noivern. Big into video games.
And that's it. And you don't have to follow me because I'm a gremlin. Go follow people who are actually creative. Bye.